the street racism. Black, white, and brown Asians all walk around this bitch with a frown. Deceiving, you can't tell the difference between a clown and a killer. Kings willing to die for the crown. Veterans wear patches on their eyeballs, disgusting. Walking on piss-infested sidewalks is rugged. Since a youngin' knew how to maintain, read books of posters selling cocaine on the strip. But Herb got it 24/7. I earned my title with hood legend. What you expect? You expect me to get beheaded?
We're back here at Fresno Forward. I'm your host, Brock Tatum. And with me, we have a host of Tea Party Boot Camp Radio, airing at noon every Saturday on 9:40 a.m. He's the founder of Fresno County GOP. And here we are, Steve Wayte. How you doing?
The Fresno County Tea Party, I can't take credit for the GOP, but I am a Central Committee member as well on the GOP. Yes.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about how the Tea Party started?
Well, for me, it was a natural transition. I was very involved in the Ron Paul campaign back in 2007.
Right.
And so when I saw the Tea Party movement breaking, I got a hold of a friend of mine who was on KMJ radio, and I said, hey, if I put some energy behind this and get this ball rolling, will you give us some oomph? And KMJ was very supportive of our efforts, and we had over 8,000 people show up at the Save Mart Center, and
wow.
We've had now, 3 or 4 major events. We've averaged almost 7,000 people per event. The Tea Party Boot Camp Radio name came from a activity that we put together in October of 2009. We called it Tea Party Boot Camp.
Okay.
We taught Sal Lewinsky's Rules for Radicals. We talked about cap and trade and talked about other issues.
Sounds like you're getting a lot of good feedback from people in the community. They want to be involved.
Oh, they want to be involved, and it's an evolution process. I would consider myself, a mainstream Republican 10 years ago.
Right.
I took the Fox News talking points, and I treated that as truth. And when we geared up for our war in Iraq, I reevaluated my whole belief system,
right.
And I've always leaned libertarian, but I still consider myself a Republican.
What are some of the fundamental values of the Tea Party?
Well, when we started it was on 3 principal core values: constitutionally limited government, fiscal responsibility, and free markets.
Okay.
And so, we've had some talk on the earlier guest, and he mentioned the word progressive. And what I feel is we've kind of bastardized our language. Conservative doesn't really mean conservative anymore.
Right.
Liberal doesn't mean liberal, and progressive really doesn't mean progressive anymore. So it's kind of interesting. I consider myself a classical liberal. And if you look back to the French Revolution and Thomas Jefferson and our founding fathers, a lot of them were classical liberals, and that pretty much falls in line with what the Tea Party believes.
Okay. Now, you said fiscal responsibility. Does that include like the anti-war movement as far as bringing troops home and spending less money overseas?
There's a segment of those people in the Tea Party, but to be honest with you, the way it was sold, the Tea Party people really came out strong against this action in Libya, very strongly.
Yeah.
Now, my opinion is that if George Bush had still been in power, that opposition would have been silent. So it really just matters who's in office. If it's an R or it's a D, just depends on who you're for. And, I pretty much, I wouldn't say anti-war, I'd say pro-peace. I'd rather put a positive spin on it than an anti-spin on it.
Fair enough.
And but the fact is, we have 700 bases in 140 countries around the world, and all empires end via their militarism, and that's what we're starting to see the unraveling here.
Okay, now some have described the movement, Tea Party movement, as a call to action from the ground up instead of from the top down. But we see presidential candidates who seem to have been picked by the establishment sort of picking up the Tea Party movement and trying to haul in votes that way. Do you think they're taking advantage of the recognition of the Tea Party movement? And who would you say is the best presidential candidate that we have?
Well, let me put it this way. They keep floating people out to see if they can get the Tea Party to nab on, because the bottom line is if we're going to go with our standard republicanism like we have in the past, without picking up the libertarian and independent type voters, you're never going to win an election again.
Right.
So they keep floating these guys out to see if they're palatable. Rick Perry, to me, he's kind of like a dirt clod. He's going to get dropped in water sooner or later, and he's going to dissolve. He's had the DREAM Act in Texas. He wrote a letter to Hillary Clinton back in the early 90s thanking her for her work on health care reform and nationalized health care. And he also wrote a letter to Nancy Pelosi urging her to support the TARP stimulus bailout, and that was under the Bush administration. I was writing letters before TARP. I was writing letters. Remember the little checks we got? Would we get?
Oh, the stimulus
Yeah,
checks?
would we get 800 a person and 300 a kid, or 500 a person, 300? I forget what the amount was. But I was writing checks to my congressman back then saying, listen, guys, when I graduated from high school, I thought when I had this amount of money, I'd be able to retire. And you keep printing it and devaluing my money. So now that number's gone up 3 times from what I thought when I graduated from high school. And to tell you the truth, I'm only 46. So I've got another 20 years to work anyway. I don't even know what that number's going to be. So for me and for the Ron Paul people in general, most people thought we were Ron Paul because of the anti-war issues. And it was more about the economic issues for me than the war issues. And I've made no bones about it. I'm a Ron Paul supporter. Is he going to win the nomination? I don't know. Probably not. But the fact is that we're sitting here 4 years after Ron Paul's first Republican campaign, and we're talking about the Federal Reserve. We're talking about empire.
Yeah, this is on the table now. It's more of a mainstream topic where it wasn't just a few years ago.
Exactly.
And he's even in polls. I mean, he's running neck and neck with Obama and Bachmann and whoever they put him up against. I think people are waking up to what he's all about.
And Obama's numbers poll lowest against Ron Paul. Ron Paul is the only opponent when you put him up against Obama where Obama drops under 40%. Everybody else, he's above it.
Yeah, he's also the only candidate who just doesn't seem to be spitting out, the same garbage all the time. He thinks for himself, and he's been saying the same thing for 25 years. He's been voting on it consistently for a long time. He's not switching up what he says to different crowds. So
now, if he takes off within the Tea Party movement, we'll see. You saw Michelle Bachmann do very well in the Iowa straw poll. But you have to realize that Michelle Bachmann was born and raised in Waterloo, Iowa. So Ron Paul went into her backyard and he lost by 152 votes. Now there was just another straw poll with the mainstream GOP down in Georgia this last weekend. So these are the mainstream Georgia GOP. Herman Cain won by 2 votes. So Ron Paul goes into Herman Cain's backyard and loses by a close second. So it's going to be interesting to watch this process evolve, and I think there's going to be a vetting process with some of these other candidates. And Sarah, please run. Ron Paul needs you to split up that conservative vote.
Do you see a disconnect between how the Tea Party movement is portrayed in the corporate media and what it actually is?
Well, the Tea Party isn't a monolith. Now, here in the Central Valley, I feel like we're way ahead of the curve. We're way more organized. We're having our Tea Party lunches at Shaw and 6th Street, 5070 North 6th Street, and we get 70 to 80 people every Tuesday. We have our first action night the first Thursday of every month, so it'll be this Thursday at New Covenant Church, and that's on Nice between Maple and Cedar, and we'll have between 250 and 400 people show up. So we're a little bit more ahead of the curve. It's not a monolith. We're not taking marching orders. We're loosely affiliated with the Tea Party Patriots, but you have the Tea Party Nation, and you have Tea Party Express, which is more of a Republican PAC. So the term Tea Party to me is more of a generic term for a thought process of smaller, fiscally responsible government. And there's going to be even some, I don't want to say pro-war, but some more militaristic people and more mainstream Republicans, but there is definitely a libertarian streak in the Tea Party movement. And for me, it's a libertarian type movement.
Okay, yeah. All right, Steve Wayte, host of Tea Party Boot Camp Radio. It's on Saturdays at noon on 9:40 a.m. And thanks for coming in with us. I could listen to you talk all day.
All right, appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a minute. We've got Steve Hempfling. He's going to tell us about the IRS. Thank you.